In our headlines on this Monday, March 24th, here in South Korea. The South Korean Constitutional Court rules against the removal of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo from office, with 7 out of the 8 justices finding fault with his opposition-led impeachment. Accordingly, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo returns to his post as acting president after more than 80 days of absence, with his first call of duty related to the ferocious forest fires nationwide. And speaking of those ferocious forest fires, 4 lives have been lost and over 2,000 forced to flee as high winds and dry conditions hamper efforts by first responders to tame the flames. We start here on the local front with news of the Constitutional Court's ruling against the impeachment of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young starts us off.
The Constitutional Court has ruled against the impeachment of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, effectively restoring him to his duties. The judicial bench delivered its ruling Monday, 87 days after the National Assembly passed a motion to remove Han from power, who is also acting president, following President Yoon Suk-yeol's own suspension from office after declaring martial law. Out of the 8 justices, 5 voted to dismiss the impeachment motion, saying there were no grounds to justify Han's removal from office. Only 1 Justice Chung Kye-sun voted to uphold the Prime Minister's impeachment. 2 justices, meanwhile, argued the impeachment case itself should be scrapped without review, as the National Assembly passed the impeachment motion with a simple majority, instead of a 2/3 majority required to remove a president. Among the 5 grounds for impeachment, the most contentious point had been the Prime Minister's refusal to appoint 3 Constitutional Court justices recommended by the opposition-led National Assembly. The bench ruled that while Han's decision to withhold the appointment violated the Constitution and the law, this did not necessarily betray public trust. One justice said the PM does not have an immediate obligation to appoint the candidates. On the National Assembly's accusation that Han abetted President Yoon in his December 3rd martial law declaration, the bench said there was no evidence to suggest that. It also did not recognise the Assembly's claim that the PM tried to establish a joint governance system with former ruling People Power Party leader Han Dong-un, nor the PM's alleged push for vetoing controversial bills on special investigations. With his near 3-month suspension behind him, Han expressed his gratitude to the Constitutional Court for its, quote, wise decision.
Upon my return, I will dedicate myself fully, always upholding the Constitution and the law, to working hand in hand with our people, the political community, the media, civic organizations, businesses, government officials, and cabinet members for the sake of our younger generations and the future of Korea.
The presidential office expressed its support for the ruling as a starting point for normalising governance, saying the National Assembly's abuse of its impeachment power was shown to be a malicious political offensive. Out of the 13 impeachment motions passed by the National Assembly in recent months, the court has ruled on and dismissed 9 cases. Ahead of the president's own impeachment verdict, observers say the justices' divergent views on Han Duck-soo's impeachment are worth noting. The bench has been deliberating on Yoon's case for a month after his final trial hearing. His ruling is expected this Friday at the earliest, or before mid-April when 2 justices retire from the bench. For now, Han's return to office marks a critical turning point. But with President Yoon Suk-yeol's fate still undecided, the nation's political uncertainty is far from over. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And upon his return to his post as acting president, Han Duck-soo urged for national unity with the focus on moving forward and not towards the left nor to the right. Our correspondent Kim Do-yeon has details.
In an address to the nation after 88 days in suspension, acting president and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Monday emphasized national unity. He especially called for politicians to work together amid multiple crises.
If there's one clear lesson we've learned over the past few years, it's that a society divided by extremes leads only to misery and fulfills the dreams of no one. The ruling and opposition parties, as well as the government, must truly change, and I will start with myself.
He also noted that during the 50 years he's spent in public service, the majority of the people in South Korea have wanted to make the country go up and forward, not left or right. As for his return as a caretaker, he said during his suspension he thought deeply about what his last responsibilities would be if he were to return. He pointed out the global trade war started by U.S. President Donald Trump and said the world is currently facing an intensifying U.S.-China power rivalry following the inauguration of President Trump, along with a new wave of geopolitical shifts and the restructuring of the global economic order.
I will devote all my wisdom and capabilities to safeguarding our national interests in the trade war that has already become a reality. For the remainder of my term, every decision I make will be guided by what best serves Korea's industries and future generations. The entire cabinet will move forward alongside me.
Han was immediately briefed about the ongoing devastating wildfires in the southeast of the country. He also made orders to public safety officials amid the turbulent times. For his first lunch back, he ate with cabinet members. There, he urged ministers to push forward on key issues directly tied to people's livelihoods with greater speed. And he asked all cabinet members and public officials across the country to do their utmost to ensure that every aspect of state affairs, including diplomacy, national security, the economy, trade, public safety, and administration, functions smoothly. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The government also will put together a task force to focus on the current Trump administration's tariffs, as well as the listing of South Korea as a sensitive country by the former Biden administration. Intentions to this end were shared on this Monday by Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok during the weekly roundtable on global economic matters at the government complex. Highlighting the importance of staying vigilant on the trade front, Choi also called for follow-up measures to recent talks between Trade Minister Han Duck-soo and U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright last week in Washington, during which the two officials agreed to work together to swiftly settle South Korea's concerns over the sensitive country designation. Meanwhile, rival political parties have responded to the Constitutional Court's ruling against the impeachment of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. I have our political correspondent Shin Ha-young standing by live with details. Ha-young, it's great to have you back. So the reaction from lawmakers across the aisle stands poles apart, I hear.
Right, Sunny. Indeed, the Constitutional Court's ruling on Prime Minister Han Duck-soo's impeachment has brought mixed reactions from rival parties. And to start with, the ruling People Power Party welcomed the court's decision to dismiss Han's impeachment, saying it was expected, and also describing the ruling as a warning against the opposition party's use of impeachment legislation. Take a listen.
It was a strong warning from the court against the opposition party's reckless legislation. It has lost all 9 cases, a historic defeat.
The party floor leader Kwon Song-dong, however, expressed deep regret over the court's decision to set the required votes for passing an impeachment motion against an acting president at 151 seats. And the PPP has been arguing that Han's impeachment should be treated like a presidential impeachment, which requires the support of 2/3 of lawmakers or 200 votes out of 300. And Kwon argued that this effectively allows unlimited impeachment against acting presidents, calling it a dangerous precedent. And the PPP said on Monday that its lawmakers proposed an amendment to the National Assembly Act to prevent abuse of impeachment rules in the future. The party's policy chief Kim Sang-hoon said that the bill would require lawmakers or parties that initiate an impeachment motion to cover the procedural costs if the Constitutional Court dismisses or rejects the case.
I see. And Hyung, what has the main opposition party been saying thus far?
Well, the main opposition Democratic Party, which was at the forefront of the opposition-led push in the National Assembly to remove Han from office, expressed regret over the ruling. Take a listen to what DP leader said.
We have to respect the decision, but I wonder if the public will accept why this clear and deliberate violation of the constitutional duty to form a constitutional body wasn't enough for impeachment.
DP floor leader Park Chan-deok also emphasized that the court confirmed it was unconstitutional not to appoint justice nominees, urging Prime Minister Han, who also resumed his role as the acting president, to do so immediately for Justice nominee Ma Eun-yeok. And Park also urged the court to deliver a verdict on President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment as early as Tuesday. And meanwhile, National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik said he respects the court's decision, stating that it resolves constitutional interpretation issues regarding the required vote to pass an impeachment motion against an acting president. And that's all I have for this hour. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Hyung, thank you for the latest on the political front. That was our National Assembly correspondent, Shin Hyung. Wildfires here in Korea that began late last week took the lives of 4 people, including firefighters, and forced over 2,000 people to flee. What's more, unrelenting winds have been hindering efforts to ease the blaze. Our Choi Soo-hyung has the latest.
Houses completely burned down with collapsed roofs and blackened walls. In Sancheong-gun County, Gyeongsang-namdo Province, the whole of Waegong village was covered in smoke over the weekend and 6 houses were destroyed.
The fire sparks were flying in all directions. With strong winds in the afternoon, the fire spread across the river.
The wildfire started last Friday afternoon on a hillside in Sancheong-gun County and spread rapidly due to strong winds. 3 firefighters and 1 government official from Changnyeong-gun County died while fighting the fire, and the county has declared a mourning period until March 27th. It is reported that it seems they were trapped while clearing embers on the mountainside as shifting winds reignited the flames. An area of around 14 square kilometers, about the size of 1,900 football fields, has been reduced to ashes. As of Monday morning, 65% of the fire had been contained. Large wildfires also broke out in other parts of the country, including Uiseong-gun County in Gyeongsangbuk-do Province and Ulju-gun in Ulsan over the weekend. The total area burned is about 87 square kilometers, roughly the size of 12,000 football fields. Nearly 160 homes have been destroyed and around 2,000 residents have been temporarily evacuated. The Korea Heritage Service has confirmed that 3 national heritage sites, including a ginkgo tree, which was over 900 years old, have been destroyed in the fire. Currently, the government is deploying over 100 helicopters and almost 9,000 personnel to put out the fires. The cause of the wildfires has not been determined yet, as the firefighting efforts are ongoing, but they are tentatively believed to be accidental, caused by acts such as welding or from burning gardening waste from tombs or graves. The Korea Meteorological Administration said that the wildfires were made worse by the severe dryness in forested areas and strong spring gusts. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, in Saudi Arabia this past Sunday, officials from Ukraine and the U.S. sat down for talks, one day ahead of official separate negotiations between Washington and Kyiv, as well as between Washington and Moscow, scheduled for this Monday. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
A day before the U.S. plans to hold separate meetings with Ukrainian and Russian delegates on Monday, Washington's technical team held talks with Ukrainian officials on Sunday in Riyadh. As part of Washington's shuttle diplomacy in Saudi Arabia, U.S. and Ukrainian officials were set to hold talks on Monday, followed by a separate meeting between U.S. and Russian delegates on the same day. However, it was later confirmed by Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky that Washington and Kyiv would hold talks a day ahead of its meeting set for Monday. Following Sunday's meeting, Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustam Umerov said talks with U.S. officials were productive and focused, adding that the two sides addressed key points, including energy. The defense chief said that Ukraine was working to make its goal of a just and lasting peace become a reality. U.S. Special Envoy to the Middle East Steve Witkoff expressed confidence that progress would be made with Russia and Ukraine. Speaking to Fox News on Sunday, Witkoff said he expects Ukraine and Russia to make progress on a ceasefire in the Black Sea after holding talks on Monday, which will naturally gravitate to a full-on shooting ceasefire. The Special Envoy also said he believes Russian President Vladimir Putin wants to end the war, stressing that he wants peace. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And Foreign Minister Choi was in Tokyo this past weekend for trilateral talks with his Japanese and Chinese counterparts aimed at advancing partnership on security matters, including North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Our foreign affairs correspondent Pei Eun-ji covers its latest diplomatic endeavor.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol sat down for talks with his Japanese and Chinese counterparts in Tokyo as the three countries seek to boost cooperation for regional peace amid geopolitical uncertainties. This is the first time that they've met since November 2023. In a press conference following the meeting that took place in Tokyo on Saturday, Cho said that they've agreed that it's in the three countries' common interest to maintain security on the Korean Peninsula. He also added that they addressed the issue of illegal cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow.
I stress that illegal military cooperation between Russia and North Korea must come to an end immediately, and that the North should not be rewarded for its wrongdoings in the course of ending the war in Ukraine.
Japanese Foreign Minister Takeshi Iwaya noted that the world is at a turning point in history and showed concerns about evolving threats from North Korea.
Regarding the current international situation, I expressed my concerns about North Korea's nuclear and missile development, cryptocurrency thefts, and cooperation with Russia as regional threats.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi described the current situation on the Korean Peninsula as complex and sensitive, while adding that all parties must meet each other halfway and show goodwill. On economic issues, he said the three countries are looking to push forward with regional economic integration, including the resumption of a free trade agreement.
The three parties are maintaining communication on restarting the negotiations on the free trade agreement and strive to resume them as soon as possible.
The three officials also agreed to speed up efforts to hold a summit between their leaders as soon as possible at a mutually convenient date. Pei Eun-ji, Arirang News.
In other news, Hyundai Motor and Gear Motors are set to hit a new milestone in the U.S. market this year, with total car sales soaring past 30 million since entering the American market back in the year 1986. According to the two automakers, their combined sales as of February stands at 29.3 million cars over the past 39 years. Now, last year, a total of 1.7 million Hyundai and Gear cars were sold in the U.S. Company officials plan to further expand their presence in the American market by focusing on sports utility vehicles and eco-friendly vehicles. Up next, we shed light on a tour here in capital Seoul that offers you the chance to join a track that traces Korea's fight for independence. Our Kim Bo-kyung was there.
Thousands of enthusiastic trekkers began walking along the trail that starts at Baekbom Square on Namsan Mountain in Seoul. They headed along one of the Korean memorial roads, national pilgrimage trails covering Korea's key historic sites. The Patriots Ministry launched this meaningful trail over the weekend to commemorate the 80th anniversary of Korea's liberation this year.
South Korea's proud history has come this far after going through many hardships and challenges. The Patriots Ministry tries to remember this through cultural events such as trekking and camping.
There are 3 courses in Seoul related to the country's independence. One that goes around the Jongno area, taking Tapgol Park, where the Declaration of Independence was read on March 1st, 1919. A second route around the Seodaemun area, where trekkers can visit the prison history hall, where martyrs were imprisoned during the Japanese colonial era. And last but not least, the route around Namsan Mountain, where people can visit the March 1st Independence Movement Monument. Not being a competition, participants slowly walked along the trail, enjoying the scent of the newly arrived spring. The focus is not on speed, but on appreciating our ancestors' unwielding wish for independence. By walking along the trail, tracing historic sites of the independence movement, people will be able to reflect on the courage and sacrifices made for the country's freedom.
I think this is a meaningful event because it lets people think about Korean history, which is easy to forget once more.
More Korea Memorial Road routes are to be announced nationwide. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. Israel has expanded its military operations in the Gaza Strip, targeting key locations and issuing evacuation orders in the southern city of Rafah. Over the weekend, the Israel Defense Forces intensified its offensive in Gaza, focusing on the southern city of Rafah. The IDF on Sunday issued immediate evacuation orders for residents in the Tel al-Sultan neighborhood, designating it a dangerous combat zone. Thousands of Palestinians fled their homes, adding to the substantial number of displaced people in the region. Also on Sunday, Israeli airstrikes targeted the Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, the largest medical facility in southern Gaza, resulting in the deaths of at least 5 individuals, including a senior Hamas political bureau member. Another senior member of the Hamas political bureau and his wife have also been killed in a strike in Al-Mawasi. In Italy, Pope Francis has made his first public appearance in over 5 weeks, following a prolonged hospitalization due to bilateral pneumonia. The 88-year-old pontiff's return was met with widespread relief and joy.
Thank you all, and I see this lady with the yellow flowers. She is good.
On Sunday, Pope Francis emerged from Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he'd been receiving treatment since mid-February. Appearing in a wheelchair, he greeted some 3,000 people outside the hospital. Expressing his gratitude, the Pope said thank you to everyone. While the Pope faced significant health challenges, including acute respiratory crises and early-stage kidney failure during his hospitalization, he remained conscious and continued his papal duties. Upon discharge, Pope Francis stopped at the Basilica of St. Mary Major to offer prayers before returning to the Vatican. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney called a snap federal election on Sunday for April 28th, aiming to secure a mandate to confront tariff threats from the United States. The announcement comes just 9 days after Carney took office, following the resignation of Justin Trudeau. The urgency stems from U.S. President Donald Trump's recent imposition of tariffs on Canadian exports and suggestions of annexing Canada as a 51st U.S. state. Carney condemned these actions, labeling the trade war the most significant crisis of our lifetimes and asserting we will not let that happen. The election campaign is expected to focus on defending national sovereignty and addressing economic challenges posed by the U.S. On Saturday, the Earth Hour campaign united millions globally in a symbolic action against climate change. From 8:30 to 9:30 p.m. local time, iconic landmarks dimmed their lights to raise environmental awareness. In New York City, the Empire State Building's tower lights were turned off. In Sydney, the sails of the Upper House went dark. Rio de Janeiro's iconic Christ the Redeemer statue in Brazil and landmarks in Hong Kong and Tokyo also switched off their lights. Organized by the World Wildlife Fund, Earth Hour 2025 saw participation from over 180 countries and territories. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
More than ever, we need to pay more attention to not leaving any embers that could become fires. The first fire crisis warning level in southern regions is at a severe level currently. In addition, dry weather warnings are in place mainly in the east of the country. On top of that, strong winds of around 50 to 70 kilometers per hour are expected throughout the country today. The view is also stuffy due to the dust in the air. With the additional yellow dust flowing in, the concentration of ultrafine dust will stay at bad levels nationwide tomorrow. Please wear a protective mask when you go outside. Tomorrow morning will start warmly across the country with Seoul, Chuncheon, and Gyeongju at 8 degrees Celsius. Highs will jump to 20 degrees in Seoul and Chuncheon, 25 degrees in Daegu and Jeju. More rain will begin on Wednesday in Jeju Island and the South Coast, and it will spread all over the country by Thursday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Coming up next is our daily panel session. Thank you for now.
How to survive in Korea. One room. So, you're surviving in Korea? If you've signed a contract for a one room, obviously you're a pro. But the real deal begins now. Step 1. Housewarming. No need to buy toilet paper, diffusers or hand soap. You'll get them soon enough as housewarming gifts. And some are bound to pile up. There's nothing better to serve your guests than milpaeyu nabe. If you have Korean friends coming over, don't forget the extra garlic. Step 2. Garbage disposal. With great power comes great responsibility. You've had a good time, so let's get to work. It might be tempting to sweep everything into a trash can, but you have to separate your garbage. Not bothered? Beware that negligence is punished with a fine or public humiliation. Step 3. Drying rack. You're excited to live alone in Korea, but the fate of these items, hanger, storage, or a hanger. Go get fresh coffee outside. Jogging doesn't cost anything, and nothing beats instant rice. But keep one item around so that you don't get too lonely. Step 4. Pros of living alone. No mum. Cons of living alone. No mum. A new towel doesn't magically appear. You have to do the laundry regularly. If anyone gives a towel as a souvenir, take it. Get rid of mold immediately. Don't be lazy with the vacuum cleaner. Housework is an endless affair. Overwhelmed? Give your mum a call and thank her for everything she's done. Did you survive in your one room? Wait, you have an unwanted visitor. Call someone you fancy. Could be the right person for the job.
Capturing your day starts at New Day at Arirang. A global conversation through the unique lens of millennials and Gen Zs. News Generation.
From politics to culture, delivering news from home and abroad. The Daily Report. A profound analysis of Korea by members of the media. Press Perspective.
A distinct perspective and a broader view. News Center.
A compelling discussion spotlighting domestic and international affairs within the frame.
Opening new vistas through a window of truth, connecting Korea and the world. Your pick, Arirang News.
Foreign Minister Choi sat down with his Japanese and Chinese counterparts in Tokyo this past Saturday for talks aimed at advancing the trilateral partnership amid mounting uncertainty over U.S. trade and security policies. With more on Press Perspective today. Hope your work week is off to a good start. It's Monday, March 24th here in Seoul, and you're watching Press Perspective. Today, we touch upon diplomacy here in this part of the world and beyond amid efforts to ensure regional stability amid growing uncertainty over global matters. For this, I have Chloe Bognon with French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Chloe, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's been. Thank you for having me.
I also have Professor Chung Koo-yeon at Kangwon National University live on the line. Professor Chung, it's a pleasure.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Right, we'll start here in the studio. Chloe, let's begin with details of the trilateral talks among foreign ministers of Seoul, Tokyo and Beijing over in Japan this past Saturday. What was addressed and what do you suppose makes this latest gathering very significant?
Yeah, so what we know of the main takeouts is the main thing that was said is the peace on the Korean Peninsula is a shared responsibility for the three countries. It was said by the foreign minister of South Korea on a press briefing right after it. And he was saying that it was at the same time a shared interest and the responsibility of the three countries together to make sure that the peace is implemented here in the peninsula and is kept. They were also pledging to promote further cooperation in all areas, so try to develop this trilateral cooperation and discussions. They were also speaking about other topics maybe that would seem less like the main point of interest, but also still interesting to see. So on Ukraine, the foreign minister of Japan said that there would be that any attempt to unilaterally change the status quo by force would not be accepted anywhere. So that was, direct blow in the direction of Russia, but also of the United States. They also spoke about climate change and aging population. And interesting to see because, the three countries all seeing the same kind of problems and could help each other and cooperate to try to raise better solutions together. Regarding what can make it significant, first of all, the three participants have been taking a stance on North Korea. So that's quite logical and a stronger blow, obviously, from Japan and South Korea. But, even China, who is one of the biggest ally of North Korea, has been taking position, especially on the peace in the peninsula, but they have been taking a stance as well, even if it was a warmer one, obviously. So that's interesting to see. And then it's always an important point when the three neighboring countries, they are not always working together. There have been political and historical divides, and they've been deciding to work together in a time where tensions are rising everywhere in the world. Wars are getting stronger and stronger, and we can see that with the Donald Trump coming back to the U.S. Tensions have been rising. It's interesting to see that the choice is made here by the allies, like the three countries, to ally and to partner up against these tensions. So that will be, I would say, the main point to take back from here.
Right, and keeping in mind what Chloe has just said, Professor Chung, what do you suppose are the merits of this three-way partnership, keeping in mind, of course, the current geopolitical landscape, and how can it be productively nurtured?
Well, it is very sensible to have this dialogue between South Korea, China, and Japan, considering their geographical proximity. We are very close to one another. But at the same time, it is also true that three countries find it very difficult to build a stronger relationship because of historical disputes, geopolitical conflict, and economic coercions. While Japan and South Korea maintain a strategic cooperation with the United States through trilateral cooperation, but it is also true that we cannot completely decouple from China. So maintaining stable economic relationship with China is crucial for both South Korea and Japan. And especially, as you mentioned, and as Chloe mentioned, especially in the response of Trump administration's disregard for rule-based order. It is important for the other countries to respect, maintain the multilateral economic system. And also cooperation such as like a people-to-people exchange, climate change is possible. And also more than anything, we can cooperate over the stability of the Korean Peninsula, especially how we can make North Korea more responsible for their behavior. That's a thing that three countries can actually cooperate and having the same voices over North Korea.
Right, to ensure regional stability, of course. Chloe, during a separate meeting on the margins of the trilateral talks, Foreign Minister Choi sat down with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi to talk about prospects of Chinese President Xi Jinping attending the APEC summit here in South Korea later this year. What do you suppose are the prospects of President Xi Jinping visiting South Korea?
Yeah, so Minister Choi, so the foreign minister of South Korea, said that they were working together to ensure that President Xi Jinping could visit the country at the occasion of the APEC summit. So it could be seen as a new turning point in bilateral relationships. So the APEC summit will take place this year, late October or November. And if Xi Jinping were to come, because he's been like kind of eating about it for a few months now. It will be the first time he visits South Korea in 11 years. And it's true that the two countries, China and South Korea, have been developing bilateral relationship for quite a few months now, with quite big announcements that have been made about the tourist visa on both sides, also about China, who could possibly lift restrictions on South Korean cultural content and everything on this K-cultures wave. So it would be interesting to see how it could go, also because I mean, they both want peace and stability in the area. They are both key economic partners, and there have been some discussion that have to be had, like even more difficult ones. Like recently in the Yellow Sea, there were a standoff between South Korean authorities that tried to come and inspect a new steel structure built by China, but Chinese authorities did not allow them to come. So, I mean, the two countries do need to be able to have like healthy relationship. If Xi Jinping were to come, what would be developed, what would be made? I read an article by South China Morning Post who were saying that for China, they were speaking on this perspective, they say they would like to step up their economical cooperation game in the area, and they would probably be really interested this year in a free trade agreement with Japan, Korea, and China, so making a new kind of bubble, economic bubble here. Also, it's interesting to see that South Korea is already one of the only developed countries who has a fair trade agreement with China. And it can be seen in numbers because South Korea is China's second largest trading partner after the U.S. And it's been getting better and better because last year bilateral trade was raising at 5.6% on a year. So that's the thing we can see. Commerce, like economic ties, would probably be the strongest point between the two countries here.
Right, the economy, it's a mutual interest between South Korea and China, of course. Professor Zhang, with regard to the upcoming APEC summit, pundits here believe that this gathering will prove to be pivotal for South Korea as it seeks to return to the global platform following its political turmoil. Do you agree? And if that is the case, how can South Korea make this latest event matter even more?
Well, actually, in addition to APEC summit, there are many actually large-scale multilateral summits are expected to place in the second half of this year. APEC summit, of course, which will be held in South Korea, but also South Korea will assume a chairmanship in the UN Security Council. So there will be a kind of big event in New York as well. So South Korea has many opportunities and venues from which it can signal the rest of the world that it is actually returning to the workplaces. And as you know, during these several weeks and several months, South Korea has been bypassed by many diplomatic high-ranking officials, especially United States, which has which was actually crucial for South Korea, because not only because there is a new administration in the United States, but also there are many actually issues that we have to coordinate with the United States, not only about foreign affairs, but also diplomacy and security and emerging technology, and also supply chain issues. There are so many issues, but that has been very bypassed, not only for the United States, but also other countries. So having these events will signal that South Korea is returning to the world places, and we are going to assume our role, which might be different role depending on the domestic circumstances. But at the same time, it is very crucial that South Korea will return the places, and at the same time, we're going to have a kind of hold a kind of big meeting where United States and Chinese leaders will join together, which will set the tone for the rest of the 3 or 4 years after, and how the world order will actually take shape. So in that sense, South Korea's role is very important for the next several months.
Right, and as South Korea looks to expand its role in the global stage, Chloe, Mr. Trump appears to be retreating from the global stage. Now, there's been talk about the U.S. possibly surrendering its military command of NATO. What more can you tell us about this development?
Yeah, so from the European point of view, Europeans are kind of holding their breath on this, because we can see a few instances. The position between NATO and the US is kind of starting to divide. First of all, let's take a few examples, but the position of NATO on Ukraine is Russia is in the wrong. The position of Donald Trump on the war in Ukraine is kind of, we can see, changing at the recent time, and is kind of getting further and further apart from Russia is in the wrong. Then obviously there is this America's first policy, where it's hard to see the US coming to help in any other conflict at the moment if they keep on this kind of policy. And Donald Trump has been saying it quite a few times already. He wants European countries to pay for their own defense. So that's something that was supposed to happen. All the countries were supposed to raise their budget for defense. It did not really happen. I mean, COVID was there, inflation was there. So most of the countries have not been raising up as much as the US would like to. And we've seen that, like in February, J.D. Vance and the US Minister of Defense both called Europeans to take care of their own defense. The Minister of Defense even said something in the lines of the US won't always be there to help them. So that's kind of the thing that's been scaring a little bit the Europeans on this. So future of NATO is kind of unsure. I mean, this is a company, not a company, but an organization that's been made after World War II in 1949. The aim was at the time to make sure that the Soviet Empire was not rising in the time of Cold War. And then they've been moving toward mostly peacekeeping all over the world. And right now we can see that what would NATO be without the US? And most of the experts are saying they would lose a lot of credibility, and especially from the strength of the US Army, but also the power of the US nuclear weapons. I mean, some of the countries, France, between them, have their own nuclear weapons, but they are not as many, there's not as much as the power that the US have currently all over the world. So that's the question. What we can see is right now, Europeans are kind of developing on two sides. First of all, trying to keep NATO and trying to keep the US into NATO. And on the other side, they're trying to develop their own European defense in case, just in case, the US would not be any more reliable on this point. But that's kind of a wait-and-see situation for now.
Right, and amid this uncertainty over the fate of NATO, Professor Zhang, should South Korea be worried about a possible withdrawal of American soldiers stationed here in the country?
Well, I don't think that is very extreme situations, and I don't think that kind of situation like withdrawal U.S. forces from South Korea will occur. Although President Trump and his advisors and many officials have made such comments in the past, especially during the campaign trail last year. But if the United States prioritizes U.S.-China competition as its strategic objective, it cannot overlook South Korea's strategic and geopolitical importance, not only the location, but also the military forces it actually bears as a role of deterrent against any types of contingency in the regions. especially when United States are really concerned about hotspots or potential dispute along the first island chain, which cross South Korea, Japan, and Philippines, then South Korea's role in these cases will be very crucial. But as Choi mentions, it is certain that both South Korea and Japan will called upon to strengthen their conventional deterrence capability for the stability of the Western Pacific. In this regard, I think existing trilateral cooperation between South Korea, Japan, and the United States, and the framework like Quad and AUKUS will be likely to be utilized by Trump administration. Although there might be different purposes and different specific use, but these types of minilaterals will be utilized as a way of deterring China's kind of provocative behavior in the region.
Right, I see. Staying with security, but moving beyond this particular region. Chloe, earlier you mentioned Ukraine. Now, officials from Ukraine, the U.S. held technical talks this past Sunday ahead of the official talks between the U.S. and Ukraine and between the U.S. and Russia set to take place in Saudi Arabia on this Monday. What can we expect from those talks?
It's kind of hard to know for now because what they want to speak about is mostly a ceasefire, limited ceasefire. But the question is, what would be included in the ceasefire when we've seen already, like it's been started with the US as mediator in the middle of the two countries. They were supposed to be the ceasefire. So the US, for example, would like it to be covering energy and infrastructure. Russia would like it to cover only energy's infrastructure, so a way smaller part. And Ukraine would like it to cover everything above and also the ports and railroads. So we can see that obviously every country has a different position. There is also the question on when would that start. I mean, there were discussions last week between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. At the end of the talk, it looked like Russia was ready to apply the ceasefire immediately. But in the end, according to Ukraine, they were like drones that attacked civilian infrastructure. So it's hard to know if they were onto energy infrastructures or not. But that's what we can see. And then Russia has been accusing Ukraine to also send drones, even though this attack was before the official signature of the ceasefire. So that's probably what would have to be discussed now with the US, because they're both talking only to the US right now. It would be when to implement it, what to implement. And it has to be a strong question, like a strong position, because Ukraine has already said that they do not trust Russia to follow a ceasefire. There is no more leverage because, I mean, economical sanctions have been taken by the other countries against Russia. It has not stopped them. So the question is, what would make Russia follow the truth of the ceasefire? And on the other side, according to some experts, there is the risk that Russia might use any attack from Ukraine to say that they are breaking the ceasefire and to put pressure on the US to make sure that they stop helping Ukraine. So that's the point of view of some experts that would be maybe the main risk. So, and then what about long-term peace? The thing is, the things that Russia is asking for before even talking about long-term peace is a no-go for Ukraine and even for some of the European allies. So the situation is going to stay, I think, complicated for quite a long time. But we'll need to see what happens in Saudi Arabia and what can come out of those talks.
Right, those talks set to take place in Saudi Arabia starting today. Professor Chung, against this backdrop, North Korea's Kim Jong-un has expressed his unwavering support for Russian aggression against Ukraine during talks with top Russian security official Sergei Shoigu last week over in Pyongyang. What are your takeaways from those talks?
Well, for North Korea, maintaining strategic alignment with Russia at this moment is very important for strengthening its leverage against the United States, South Korea, and even China. The United States, especially Trump administration, was actually very in a hasty manner pushed the ceasefire negotiation with Russian-Ukraine war, which seems to have already lost the initiative in the negotiation. Also, Trump administration pursued a retrenchment foreign policy and seeking a reset in relation with Russia made this outcome inevitable, I think. And as a result, Russia actually achieved most of what it actually supposed to want to, like gain benefit such as no concession, the restoration of U.S. relations, sanction relief, and possibly escape from diplomatic isolation. That kind of things might be pursued during the negotiations. And United States, in its attempt to kind of manage it, kind of mitigate the crisis in the Ukraine theaters, they can just hastily kind of end the term in the kind of peace talk. So in that context, North Korea stands to benefit from strengthening its alignment to Russia to bolster its leverage against the United States and South Korea. This is particularly true considering that it was President Trump who actually declared the interest in the U.S.-North Korea talk. And currently, North Korea has no incentive to initiate talks, and by strengthening its relations with Russia and potentially China in the later hours, reinforcing this North Korea or China or Russia trilateral alignment, North Korea can increase its leverage against the United States and South Korea. So this could potentially give a huge advantage in any future inter-Korean and U.S.-North Korea dialogue. So North Korea, for the time being, will show us a very close relationship with Russia in any types of setting.
Right, and while North Korea shares its support for Russia, France and the UK, Chloe, have spoken about boots on the ground in Ukraine in the form of peacekeeping troops. What's the latest on that front?
Yeah, so that's nothing new. I mean, we've also been discussing it together here. So it's been around since early 2024. French President Emmanuel Macron was saying that he refused to rule out the idea of sending troops to Ukraine after, once the truce is implemented, so after the war. At the time, most of the allies, most of the other countries were absolutely against the idea, but we've seen that it's been gaining momentum. And right now, there were talk last week in the United Kingdom with 31 countries that have been discussing what could happen or it could be implemented. Because what they say is it needs to be discussed and to be decided before there is a ceasefire, because once the ceasefire is on, the troops have to be able to come onto the ground in Ukraine immediately to make sure that they are able to be peacekeepers. It's interesting to note that Russia has been saying that they are absolutely against having NATO troops in Ukraine as peacekeepers, so that means that the Europeans have to come with another solution. So that's why France and England or the United Kingdom are both like at the head of the spear on this situation. They're trying to find ways. It's kind of still hard at the moment. The discussion is where should they be? Probably not on the front line, nowhere near the places that could be more still in tension. Definitely not happening if there is still conflict going on. But the other question is also how many troops should be sent. They are staying quite vague on this. They are saying between 10,000 and 30,000. Would that be enough? Some experts are saying that it probably won't be enough to kind of be a deterrent for Russia. And then also there is a thing like very pragmatic is right now, only the UK and France have been saying that they are willing to send troops. Other countries like Canada, Australia, Finland have said that they want to be involved in a way, but they're not taking for now position as about sending troops in Ukraine. So the whole situation is still work in progress, but they do feel that there is an urgency to do it before the two countries reach any agreement on ceasefires.
All right, which is why we can probably expect more talks going forward then. All right, Chloe, as always, thank you very much for your time and your thoughts. And Professor Chung at Kangwon National University, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that is all for today. Do join us again same time tomorrow for a look at the Constitutional Court's ruling on the impeachment of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo. Thank you for watching.